Thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be here introducing this session. It's very odd seeing a photo of yourself on screen, especially when it's an ancient photo that I haven't updated from my LinkedIn, but don't tell anybody. So I just wanted to say what a pleasure it is to be introducing this session on the power of non-formal education and learning to you this afternoon. I think it's really important that this whole day's events have been taking place alongside the Transforming Education Summit. It's clear that young people need equal access to quality formal education, and as we've been talking about today in both venues, it's also clear we need a total transformation of formal education. It needs to be fit for purpose, it needs to be fit for young people, it needs to correspond to their needs and their lives, it needs to be fit for purpose now and for the future. At the same time as acknowledging and stressing the importance of good quality formal education, as a group, the Big Six youth-facing organisations would stress the importance in parallel of having strong and dynamic non-formal education and learning. To mention briefly the Big Six, this is an alliance of youth-serving organisations which have a focus on non-formal education and learning and on youth leadership. We're an organisation of six. You can see our logos up the top. So it's the World Association of Girl Guides and Girl Scouts, the World Organisation of the Scout Movement, the YMCA, the WYWCA, the Duke of Edinburgh International Award, and the International Federation of Red Cross and Red Crescent Societies. We've been working together since 1996. The collaboration is really important in terms of developing the agency of young people, supporting them as they develop their own agency in leadership and in decision-making, responding to the needs of young people in times of crisis, but also at all times, making sure that we respond and bring into our movements young people in all of the diversity all over the world. And we feel very strongly as the Big Six that unless we can harness the power of young people through their education processes, through non-formal education and learning and their contributions to now and to the future as the leaders they are now and for the future, it will not be possible to achieve the Sustainable Development Goals and the Common Agenda. Non-formal education and learning is a really important complement to formal education. It's vital for developing life skills, practical skills, resilience, leadership, self-directed learning, empowerment, and also a spirit of volunteering and community service. In 2019, we were influential in developing a non-formal education and learning summit. In 2020, as we saw the catastrophic impact and consequences of COVID for young people, we developed the Global Youth Mobilization in an endeavour to ensure that young people could be at the heart of finding solutions to the problems that COVID was generating for youth across the world. Our colleagues who will be joining me shortly will be speaking much more in more detail about the importance of the work that we've done in the Global Youth Mobilization, making sure that we could get funding to young people with decisions on the funding made by young people so that young people would develop their own solutions to the problems that they were facing in their communities. And we have been very successful in delivering programs to local solutions led by youth, to important developmental work in our individual organisations of each of the Big Six across the world. We have Big Six members in over 190 countries across the world, and we reach a population of 250 million who are involved in one or other of our organisations. I want to now bring to the stage Dr. Helga Mutasingwa. Helga is a medical doctor. She has trained in Tanzania. She's been an active member of the Tanzanian Girl Guide Association for many years. She's been a volunteer with them. She's been on their national executive board, and she's been involved in training. For the last year and a half, she's also been a dynamic and active member, a youth member of the Global Youth Mobilization that our Big Six organizations have been running since early 2020. I'd like to call Helga to the stage.
Thank you, Anna. Good evening, everyone. I think I need to say this. This was a last minute for me to be here physically. And I think it's a challenge for the most of us, especially coming from probably Asia and Africa because of the visa issues, others probably finance and safeguarding support. And I would really want everyone to appreciate that we are actually privileged to be here right now. And whatever that we are going to be discussing, this very important conversation, we need to understand that today we are missing the key insights of those who are not able to be represented in person. So let's appreciate this, and it's a call, probably, hopefully we get to have these very important conversations for young people in places whereby everyone is actually welcomed and very comfortable to participate in such key conversations. As I've been introduced, from Tanzania, I'm a medical doctor. Thank you. Thank you, asante. So I'd like someone to reflect. Why did I introduce myself? People might ask, a medical doctor is expected to be in hospitals probably treating. Why are you here speaking on something about non-formal education? I had a privilege as a girl guide in Tanzania to have the non-formal education experience. And this was because of things I met or experienced, gender-based violence, problems in mental health problems. But then you get to struggle as much as you have this very academic system of formal education. Not everything gets to be covered in that area, and you are not given a chance to work on those issues at that specific moment. So through this non-formal education, I was able to learn about, gender equality, advocacy. I had an opportunity to be an advocacy champion of WAGGGS at the CSW and get to speak with the experience in health issues, but also as a social component, but also as a girl, as a Tanzanian girl. So this has been a privilege for me, and I would request or invite everyone to think throughout your life what has been an experience being through the non-formal education, and what have you learned outside the formal education? I believe everyone has learned outside that formal education. So just take a minute to reflect. And as I'm inviting my panelists around, whereby they're going to actually share their experiences in that, and probably you can relate with what they're going to share. So warmly welcome Ahmed. He's the General Secretary of World Organization of the Scouts Movement. Bas, the Youth Representative of International Federation of Red Cross and Crescent Society. We have Met Gamechu, who is also my fellow youth board representative of Global Youth Mobilization and member of World YWCA. And then I have Paul, who is the youth representative of World Organization of the Scouts Movement. While it's being sorted out, is it working? We'll continue. Yes, so while the tech is being sorted out, I'd like to also speak about, as I said, with youth we're from the big 6 organizations, and as Anna said, that we have been working on the global youth mobilization activities, and we'll get to hear more about non-formal education. I would like to start with Paul, who is the youth representative of WOSM. Hi, Paul.
Hi, just speak loud.
Or maybe you can come stand here.
Come next to me.
Yes, please. So as people are reflecting, I'd like for you to share how has it been your experience as a scout on how non-formal education has complemented your formal education. Welcome.
Thank you, Helga. And it's good to improvise. We'll work with what is in the room, also what's left in the room. Thank you for staying. Yeah, it's So Helga has rightfully said I'm a scout, and I admit I love being a scout. And I was invited to share a bit about how I became a scout and what scouting is all about, linking to non-formal education, of course. I will admit that I've always been good inside the classroom. But I'd like you to know that this is not who I am, and this is not who I want to be. Who I am today is thanks to scouting. And so my argument here is that non-formal education has a transformative intention and effect, and so it has had scouting on me. I'd like to give you 3 examples of how this whole system works. And those are only examples. I could probably speak for 20 minutes. We've discussed behind stage how you speak without having notes or having an intention to say something. The first is experiential learning, which is one core method of scouting. You all know this phrase, I'm pretty sure, learning by doing, right? I see some nodding. By the way, I also wanted to mention, we heard about climate education previously, and apart from learning by doing, scouting has also taught me learning to appreciate. So from when I was 7 years old, I would camp outside and spend so much time in nature that I do feel sort of connected to what is these days very much at risk and threatened. So that's been my first lesson maybe. But to tell you the story about my experiential learning was that when I was probably 8, 9 years old, we would, in a small group of young people, be in charge of planning for the weekend what to eat with a bunch of 20 young children. So we would be given a white paper, and the question was, for us, or our task was to plan, how much food do we need? What do we want to eat? What's the budget for this? And then we'd get some money, do the groceries. And the learning experience was that when during this weekend with a bunch of 20 hungry young children that just spent 5 hours outside, came to eat and we would run out of bread, or we would be left over with 2 kilograms of prepared pasta because we had just miscalculated. Then the reflection about this was a core learning experiences in the lives of young children. You might think that this is a really simple story and it's something easy to do to a child, and in fact it is. But I later understood that this is an educational method and a concept that taught me to take over responsibility and to reflect on what I had decided previously, and in this way progress. Scouting and non-formal education is what provides the structures for those kinds of learning experiences. My second point is that through scouting or through non-formal education, I learned about my purpose. Every scout, and I can pretty much say that on behalf of 57 million young people around the world, has the intention to leave this world a little better than they found it. And I also invite you to take that as your sort of vision or ambition. It's a very simple one, but it's a very powerful one. And so scouting has been the place where I developed my own learning, or personal value system. And there have been core experiences, which I don't have the time to share now, but I'm happy to also speak about these. And the third one is, going beyond this whole motivation or ambition, is the question of character development. So one trait I definitely would like to take out of this is responsibility. Remember that story about sort of at a young age taking leadership on what's going to be the shopping list or what you're going to eat. Very simple. That in scouting progresses with your age, and at a certain point, like I am today, you become a young leader and you sort of take responsibility and ownership for the things you do and for the people around you. So maybe one last remark about this scarf, the meaning of what many people don't understand, of course. That means we are scouts and we belong to the Global Scout movement, but it also means we made a promise. And this promise is towards, first of all, myself, towards others around me, and in general, my community, or the larger global community. So when hearing transforming education so often in these past days, and I hope to hear it more, that really made me think about transformative education, which I think Scouting is. It harnesses or it understands educational methods as a tool to explore, to access, and eventually apply each and everyone's personal strengths. And that's how I became a strong person, I think. Thank you.
Thank you, Paul. Can you hear? Okay, perfect. Thank you so much, Paul. That was really nice. Ahmed, as I introduced, Ahmed is the Secretary General of WOSM, the World Organization of the Scouts Movement. And also, to keep in the spotlight, he's the first UN Youth Envoy. So from these experiences, Ahmed, you have seen many scouts, I believe, from your position all around the world benefit from non-formal education, as Paul said. And from your previous position, what have these experiences taught you about the value of non-formal education?
Well, thanks, Helga. Thanks for the introduction. And for answering that, just to acknowledge the last men and women standing here, thank you so much for staying the course and for being here. I think also I want to mark a personal thing for me in this panel. I've been around these blocks, around the General Assembly for a couple of years now, and I am happy to celebrate at this panel that for the first time during a UNGA, I'm the oldest guy in the panel. Never happened before. That's something I personally want to mark and celebrate. Might be a sign of youth empowerment, or that I'm aging, or both, but I think we're heading there. Just to your point, I think it's, Paul said it beautifully, and it's personal reflection about non-formal education. Yesterday or the day before, we were reflecting on some of the sessions, and I was asking where non-formal education is coming. And I think one thing we're leaving this Transforming Education Summit with, that people still don't know what to call it. They have been using so many different terms to try to explain what we are championing for as non-formal education. Skilling, or looking at various ways of pronouncing these youth programs or extracurricular activities, etc. I think it's time to help educate the sector as well, and let's reference and know what we're talking about, because it's always being parked somewhere as this is the extra thing, or this thing that happens outside of the classroom. For me, I think if there's one thing that emphasizes the power of non-formal education, is the reality of how young people are learning today. I repeatedly said that today's youth are learning despite formal education, not because of formal education. I spent 4 years in undergrad at university as studying computer information system. And when we graduated, everyone was trying to figure out a way how they are going to learn coding or something meaningful so they can bridge that transition to the labor market. So basically 4 years of education, and you can measure to that, where poor education being delivered, or a broken education system, and that's long fix about fixing the formal education system with the classroom, with the teacher, with the curriculum, and trying to reimagine and then retransform the whole formal education system. And then comes the whole bill. I mean, who's going to pay for all of that? Today at the summit, a head of a state made a pledge that is ambitious and sad at the same time. That head of a state said his pledge is by the year 2030, that country will halve the number of young people out of school. Isn't that sad? That we're accepting by 2030 that what we can do is halving the number of the young people who are out of school. And was celebrated. I think we really need to rethink again what happens to the second half. That's given the pledges met. What happens to all young people who have no chance of accessing? We're not talking about quality education. Still that basic story of access. How you are going to reach out to them. And for me, I feel that responsibility in my job. I feel that responsibility and with our colleagues in the Big Six, where we would think of ourselves, we have a solution to empower young people and offer them skills and opportunity to play that catch-up with life, to play that catch-up to re-engage as good citizens, active citizens, or even good employees or entrepreneurs, or finding ways where the formal education system is not there. Again, we never position ourselves as an alternative to formal education. That's not the story. But we're acknowledging the reality that there is a massive gap. 17 goals left, 8 years, like almost double the number of the years left to achieve them. The goal is massively behind. And then this world has continued to be surprised over normal events. Like, I was here in 2015 when we adopted the SDGs, and at that time we were talking about 17 goals in 15 years, and the commitment is there. And now, just the Bill Gates Foundation just came out with a report talking about how lagging behind we are on all of these goals, including the goal on education. And that what I really hope from now until the SDG Summit next year, that we'll come together to start thinking in a more practical way about how we are going to bridge the gap in the 7-8 years left. And for me, if it means that going down from 17 goals to maybe a more consolidated list of targets, education has to come at the center of that. Non-formal education can be a very powerful tool that would help us to bridge this gap, and a very economic one. Maybe, I couldn't hear the full presentation, but with the chair of our board, Anna, you would know that the one thing that we don't mention enough, how cost-effective non-formal education and its ability to deliver. And in Scouting, for example, the program is delivered by over 5 million volunteers worldwide who are supporting us. And there are alternatives, ways of offering that opportunity for young people. So yes, it's complementary, it's a catch-up element of making sure that we don't leave that half of that particular nation without mentioning it, but so many other young people who are going to education. I think President earlier mentioned that it's not only about going to school, but actually about learning, and that gap still exists.
Thank you so much. Yeah. It's not about going to school, but the quality of it. Thank you. Hi, Bas. Yes, as a youth rep from IFRC, International Federation of Red Cross and Red Crescent Society, can you tell us a little bit about your experience of non-formal education in humanitarian setting?
Yes, thank you, Helga, as well. I was wondering how you would introduce me indeed, because we are the IFRC, but it's a bit of a weird acronym, but you will know it as Red Cross or Red Crescent in your own home countries. And together we form the largest humanitarian network of 192 national societies that mobilize around 19 million volunteers worldwide, who most of them are young, by the way. And together we build resilient communities that are able to be prepared, ready to respond, and to bounce back after crisis or disaster hits. And in that mission that we hold, non-formal education is a key element in building resilient communities, because it's about building skills to take care of yourself first, and then to take care of others. And we, as a Red Cross and Red Crescent, we do that in different domains like disasters, around risk reduction, around preparedness, but also response. In health, around non or communicable diseases, about mental health. But also, and many people don't know, really around values, around violence prevention in communities, discrimination, really focusing on giving young people the skills that they need to thrive in adversity as well, in the challenges that they're going to be posed with. And I think those challenges are very different country by country, depending on your background or whatever, how life has shaped you. But those principles around non-formal education, they will truly stand. They are rather universal around the globe, because it's based around respect, it's around empathy, it's about principles, it's about values that really help you understand the world around you. I think all of us here, I mean, we're living in a very weird world sometimes, where we see a lot of segregation, a lot of violence, we see inflation, we see climate change. Young people nowadays, including myself, I can imagine, are very stressed about everything that they see around them. And we, through non-formal education, we really hoped for young people to find a way to interpret their world around, but really through the lens of empathy, of kindness, of an obligation for them and their communities to make this world a better place, and that they will always use that avenue, so to say. And it's interesting because for an organization, non-formal education for us, it really has two elements. So indeed, what I talked about is more programmatic area. So very much around disasters, around health, around values, really being on the ground, being in communities. But non-formal education for us as an organization is also to, I think as Paul actually mentioned, around learning by doing. Our young people, they basically thrive our humanitarian action on the ground. It's them who are at the front line in times of crisis, in conflict, to take care of people in need. But they're much more than just delivery, because they come from the communities. They know best what is happening in their communities and what needs to change and how we can best go about doing so. So we really need to put them in the driver's seat as well, to design programs that actually make about change for them. And through, I think Anna spoke about the Global Youth Mobilization Fund, that has really helped us as an organization to learn from non-formal education, because it's not only about what you do on the ground, but also what you do internally. We have done around 300 projects through the Global Youth Mobilization Fund, where we really gave young people an opportunity to drive program design, and not just giving them a bit of money and then they do their project, but really engage them on a journey with experts, with training, with building their skills to make those projects better. And not all of those 300 projects were great. Many of them were, but not all of them. And that's okay, because you learn as well by failing. And I think that's a principle in non-formal education as well. Like the example that Paul said about the bread or the pasta. You fail at something, but you reflect and you learn. And that's what we do as an organization as well. So it's not only giving non-formal education to young people to help them thrive, but also non-formal education for us as an organization to learn what works and what doesn't work, so that we can better support our communities that need us.
Thank you so much, Bess. That was really nice, a reflection on the humanitarian sector. Thank you. Okay, time. So as I said, we have Meti. On the picture you can see it's Casey, but Meti also is one of the young people who received the visa at last minute. And thankfully, she's taking, we get to hear her voice instead of Casey. Thanks, Casey, for that. So Meti, as the youth board rep of Global Youth Mobilization, but also as the member of World WYWCA. Just in 1 minute, sorry, how is the strategic partnership has brought the non-formal education in the picture?
Thank you, Helga. I can answer the question, but I would like to give a little bit of context on how I'm here. And as she said, like for World WYWCA, we believe in walking the talk, and that includes giving value to youth leadership and to intergenerational leadership. And I think it's a big show that Casey was, as you can see, I'm not Casey. I'm not the CEO of World WYWCA. Well, maybe someday, but so I think it's a big show of how different and dynamic the organization is for her to be so willing to give up her seat and for me to speak here with you. So going off of that and to talk about strategic leadership, I'll try to make this short. I know we're short on time.
In 55 seconds, so yes.
So in a perfect world, I believe that it would not be necessary at all for us to have non-formal education, because formal education would already involve all the values and all the lessons that we get from non-formal education. including gender-sensitive and gender-transformative education, including accessibility of education and free, if not affordable, education as well. But the reality of it is we're not living in a perfect world. That's just it. And so in order to make up for those things, it is very important and it's very vital for young people and especially for young girls and young women to have access to non-formal education. In regards to strategic partnerships, I think there's a big value in it. And I think that's one of the things that we've been able to explore through the Big Six and the Global Youth Mobilization Initiative. I think it's been an interesting journey because we all come from organizations that are, well, the biggest youth organizations and youth movements in the world. And we all come from very diverse point of views and
the Global Youth Mobilization is the partnership. Sorry, due to time. Thank you so much, Meti. If you can just finish that sentence, because somebody's there looking at me. Yes, that's why. Yes, yeah, just that one sentence. Please finish, and then yes.
You can risk it, her walking off.
Yeah. And she's like, it's not my fault. But yeah, as I was saying, it's. Yeah, I forgot what I was about to say. But yeah, it's very important, and it showed us that even if we come from different diverse organizations, it's possible for us to work together to strategically partner. And especially being in this space of where we're all working towards education and yet we're so divided in how we approach the subject. But if we can find strategic ways to partner and to collaborate, I think we can make a much bigger impact and it would be a much more sustainable and lasting change. So thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you so much. Just in summary, you can see we have 6 big organizations, but everyone spoke about the values. We partnered and more than 32 projects that are led by youth. You can visit our website of the Global Youth Mobilization, see what young people have done, especially through the non-formal education. We have Wheels of Change in Bangladesh, whereby the young people had to create some programs for the children in rural areas so that they can continue studying as much as people. We had the digital divide. We have people in Cameroon, young people who actually made sure that education on gender equality, gender-based violence, vaccination was reached to these young people. So through non-formal education, we get the education, but also we get to be encouraged to take action right away, not wait for 6 years or 5 years to get a certificate to take action. So thank you so much. Warmly welcome.